Welcome to my ongoing experiment where I interview amazing people in Pro AV, people on a mission to elevate their corner of the industry and share their lessons learned with you. My name is Jeremy Birch, and I'm happy to introduce you today to David Riberi. David is the CEO of LightWerks, a Pro AV Integrator headquartered in the LA area. He was also my boss during the 5 years that I worked for them as an engineer. But he's also a fantastic human being who genuinely cares about his people. And that's why I wanted to share him with you today. So with that impossible setup, let's jump right into some questions. Let's start with a little bit of the backstory. I always like to get into that. You guys were CCS for a long time before the name changed to LightWerks. Tell me a little bit about the CCS franchise model, just for people who don't know, and how and when you started CCS California.
So I came here 21 and a half years ago. I used to work for Proxima, one of the early manufacturers in the industry. And through that, for a brief time, I was a national sales manager. Through that work, I met a lot of wonderful people around the country, wonderful dealers. And one in particular, John Godbout and Beth, his wife, in Scottsdale, had a lot of dealings with and tremendous fondness for, and kind of realized that the industry, at least at that time, the distribution side was made up of typically family-owned businesses. I always wanted to be in business for myself, have something, and I talked my wife into doing this. I will be candid. And we moved from San Diego to Los Angeles to start the Los Angeles office of CCS Presentation Systems. The arrangement there is pretty much everybody is separately owned and operated, but we all do business as partners, even though legally the arrangement is not a partnership arrangement. But we found over the years, as the industry developed and as our relationships, we found kind of folks that might want to play in that environment. The company grew to the point where it was about 25 or so offices around the country. When we left the partnership or left the arrangement at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2017. But all like-minded.
Okay, I'll get into that.
Yeah, all like-minded people, tremendous admiration, affection, but for reasons that I'm sure we'll discuss in a minute, going forward, we need to make.
Got it. Okay. So several different CCS offices in different regions of the country, all sort of independently owned and operated, but you all look like one cohesive larger company for the sake of buying power and leverage where it makes sense like that.
I think we were always transparent about the arrangement, and we kind of felt it was a good way to scale up as the industry's gotten bigger, and indeed now they're almost billion-dollar integrators. Getting bigger was important, but it also kind of captured that local entrepreneurship of all the partners in the group. Right.
Excellent. Okay. So think back, if you can, to a time in your history when business wasn't going so well because of a particular business process that you have since fixed. What was the problem? And then we'll get into the fix.
The problem is probably what I had a former boss and kind of mentor described as success rearing its ugly head. And there is the business was great. Business was growing. We didn't have to necessarily be disciplined about how we did things. We certainly, business, you got to pay your bills, you got to invoice your customers, collect. But I would say we got to the point with our integration business where both through the amount of work we were doing and probably the complexity of the work, we found a need to kind of make sure we stopped and created processes that we would use to actually do the work. And it so happened that it was with the downturn in the economy, we kind of had some extra time on our hands, and we said, well, if we can't get bigger right now, let's get better. And we really stopped and spent time working on our processes and figuring out, how to make sure we executed projects profitably and consistently.
Okay. Was there one highest leverage? Yeah. Go ahead.
It's super important if you're going to run a business to, document what you do and then do what you document.
Exactly. But can you point to, or can you think of one of the most high leverage things you did in that process that was the most beneficial?
I would probably.
Was there any one thing that stood out?
I think it was probably going to the people who are in the field and who have the work to do and listening to them and hearing what they thought we needed to be doing and how things could work. And it's a continuous improvement process. There's by no means an end to that, or you're dead, I guess. But to this day, I still spend a lot of time with everybody doing the work to find out how we can do better.
Got it. So what would you say to other integrators who are maybe gone through that fast growing stage, where they haven't had to pay as close of attention as you've learned that you need to processes and things like that? What would you say to them to help them avoid the same pitfall?
Well, I guess
circumvent it.
Yeah, the seeds of failure can be sown when you're successful. So the danger is, I'm doing great, and I must be brilliant, and this is easy, and I hope this doesn't befall them. But I think that gravity eventually takes hold of every business, and whether it's more competition or the loss of key employees or what have you, there is going to typically comes a day when you need to be really good at what you do, because if you're not, and I think many companies in the industry have shown this, they've kind of come and gone over the years. It catches up with you. There's no question. I've always said revenue hides a multitude of sins, because if you're growing, there's kind of extra money you can throw. But it doesn't feel very good either. I think the work we're doing now, when we're finishing on time and with the kind of architectural environments we're in, and everybody's happy. The emails we get that people are out of their way telling us that they're happy with the work we've done. That's very gratifying. And I think if you're getting the emails that say they're not happy, then you really need to pay close attention to what your processes are to make sure that stops. Right.
Even if you're not feeling the heat yet, right? Yeah. Listen to that customer feedback.
Just go home. But I think that's a short-term. Success is a short-term thing. It comes and goes. So if you want to be around for 20 years, or maybe pass it on to the next generation, you better really have a book that you're using to run your business.
Sure. So let's fast forward now to present day. Today's CCS California is now LightWerks.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about the genesis behind the name change. I know from being an employee, LightWerks was always the official legal name, even when you were CCS, right? But now you're actually going by that as your DBA as well. So tell me a little bit about why the changeover.
Well, if I could just go back a little bit in the Wayback Machine,
sure.
The full company name is LightWerks Communication Systems. And when we were contemplating being in business, even at the time we were selling strictly audiovisual equipment, and it was at the time LCD panels, you still put on over a projector somewhat. We said, it's kind of like the railroad business. Are we in the railroad business or the transportation business? And I think those companies that figured out they weren't just choo-choos and cabooses, that they were in transportation, that's a bigger idea than just being a railroad. So we said, all right, what is that in our industry? So clearly it's communication and making sure that there's a meeting of the minds. Going to the present day, or beginning of 2017, for 20 years, we've been in business in California only, and it's one of the largest markets in the. If it was a country, I don't know, it'd be 5 or 6 or something. But it is very, so there's a lot of opportunities, no question. But of course, it attracts a lot of competition, and everybody hearing this is like, tell me about it. It's competitive everywhere. But what we're really starting to see here is that the cost of doing business in California is becoming very difficult, especially for a labor-intensive business, and become and continues to be more labor-intensive because we're actually, doing the work. We felt as a matter of survival, frankly, we needed to be operating outside of only California, and following some opportunities, have found ourselves into the Northwest, and that idea of geographically fluid it doesn't really work with the CCS model, which is a little bit more territorial, and ultimately that's what kind of led for a review of where we're going and why the part of that group, as much as I love all those guys, it just didn't make sense for our future, survival and hopefully thriving.
Right. But no one was really doing no other CCS office was doing substantial business in that Pacific Northwest area either.
Well, I think the question is substantial, but I think there's design, or indeed there were folks active in markets where we wanted to be in business, and ultimately that just couldn't work with inside the model, and nobody's it just didn't work any longer. After the business has evolved many times over the years, but in this case, the evolution led us to kind of look at fundamentally, could we be part of the group? And it turned out, from everybody's mutual agreement, that it was probably time not to be part of the CCS group.
Got it. Well, thanks for being open and transparent about that. I know a lot of people probably still wonder what the story is and the backstory. It's great to get it from firsthand. Let me, if I can, change gears just a little bit and talk about a specific area within the project flow within an AV integration businesses that I've seen. A little while back, I interviewed some of the top AV engineers from around the country to find out what some of the daily tasks were that they did that lent themselves most to automation. I'm talking mainly via software. And what I found is that on an average project, right, everyone categorizes projects. Well, there's small, there's medium, there's large. If you kind of amalgamate all those together into an average project, 2 hours are spent per project hunting down dealer pricing on all the different line items. And another hour is spent getting all the accessories right? The little part pieces, the making sure the rack mounts are all accounted for, the pre-made jumper cables, the PoE injectors, power supplies, yada yada yada, all that little stuff. So that's 3 hours of engineering time per quote. Does that number surprise you?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to hear that we're not the only ones. And as you're saying it, I would feel like, as I ponder all these, the devil's in the details. Well, an engineer's job is to have the details. And certainly the pricing piece is something that we all feel, because sales folks might want to have the latest pricing, and we've yet to find a good solution to automate that. The engineering piece feels like it might be a little low, but maybe if you are clever and kick some things up, you can cut some time there. But we more and more are having our projects engineered, even smaller ones, because we have had what I would call sales engineers, not just salespeople, but for your sales engineers.
Yeah.
Really in those details that maybe they're not as attuned to. And, I guess on the one hand, it's spending an hour, I guess. On the other hand, it probably saves multiple hours of trouble later and overnighting or having to go to Home Depot to get that stuff. So it's well worth it. But there's no question both of those things are a time suck.
Right. And I know as you guys at LightWerks as working in recent years, when I was there and on, constantly improving the business process, you guys at one point brought in Brad Malone from Navigate Consulting, right? They specialize in helping AV companies get leaner and get rid of waste and processes and stuff like that.
Yep.
And he says that he's found it's at a minimum 10x multiplier when those kind of things don't get caught till the guys are out in the field and they think they have everything they need, you know? So it really balloons if not caught early, right? Sort of the telescoping effect as you go down further the process.
It gets lost in we're spending money on our credit cards. Why is that? Well, you know, it's a little bit from everybody, but if you really look into it, what's the cause of the symptom is partially what we're talking about.
Right. What would you guess is the, you know, as a business owner, what would you guess is the burden cost of that 3 hours of engineering time in the California market?
You know, it's probably on the order of several $100s. You know, we all have our little formulas to figure out what our burden cost. I mean, a few hours of time, whether it's cost or opportunity cost, which is a higher number because that could be money you'd be making.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, easily several $100s.
Yeah, it's on a national average. I've heard numbers like 65 an hour would be like a conservative hourly estimate for engineering time. So still that, you know, that really adds up and racks up.
Well, if you look at CPI, you know, California is typically 1.35 the national average. So that kind of holds with me.
Oh, okay. That's good to know, multipliers like that. So if anyone listening is interested in actually solving this kind of problem we've been talking about just recently here, you can go to my website and there'll be a video with link to more information on a software solution I'm creating that you can get in on or just learn more about. And I'll have notes below this, wherever you're seeing this video, with that link. But basically it's my name, just jeremybirch.com. It's pretty straightforward. So one kind of wrap up question I wanted that's not necessarily business related at all, but I always find that the answers are interesting that I get from people. If this is sort of the, if you could go back in time to when you started in AV and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
You want a funny, snarky answer, or you want like a real answer? I'll give you both.
Well, let's go with snarky because it's right on the tip of your tongue, I can tell.
The snarky answer, we do something else. I joke. I kid. No, I love what we do. I still love it. I'm a nerd, proudly. What I would tell my younger self, I mean, I think it does go back to, hey, when sales are great, and I knew this, I'm a business person, I'm not just a sales person, but I think more effort could have been spent building the infrastructure and processes and speaking of, you know, Brad Malone, the good project management habits that maybe we didn't appreciate except through having learned the School of Hard Knocks, all that stuff. I think it would have saved ourselves a lot of headache. But yeah, you know, I would say just mind your P's and Q's and put a process in place and do it later. Before you need to.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks so much. I really enjoyed our chat, David, and good excuse to get on the phone with you. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I will sign off for now, and we'll talk later.
Thanks, Jeremy. See you, buddy.
Sure. Okay.